What is going on, all you Faceoff fanatics? And welcome back to the Faceoff Zone podcast, a podcast dedicated solely to the Faceoff position. I'm your host, John Bodner, and I'll be breaking down and covering all the big Faceoff storylines of this upcoming NCAA lacrosse season. On this episode, we're talking Big East Conference. Some big-time heavy hitters in the Big East this season, so we got a lot to talk about today. If you haven't already, please give the Faceoff Zone channel on YouTube a subscribe or a follow on Instagram, so that way you can see all the upcoming Faceoff, full game Faceoff highlights of this upcoming season I plan on showing you. So let's get this thing going again, and let's dive deep into the zone. All right, so let's get back into it here. Welcome back. It's crazy to me. We got 4 days until the first college lacrosse game of the year. You know, the big Mercer-Bellarmine matchup that I can't wait for. But, I still want to talk about some of these conferences before everybody gets going here. So today we're talking Big East Conference. I don't know. You know, the Big East kind of reminds me a little bit of the CAA last year in a way that there's a little bit of parity. I mean, you have the two. You know, you had Hofstra and UMass kind of at the top last season, whereas with the Big East, you kind of had Georgetown and Denver at the top last year. And then you kind of had, you know, the middle of the pack. You had Villanova, Providence, Marquette. It's similar to the CAA. And then, you know, you kind of had your bottom feeders, which, you know, for the Big East last year was St. John's. So, it seems like, you know, the Providence lost a senior, but also, you know, with like the CAA, kind of everybody in the Big East is also coming back. So they've all had an off season to continue developing, you know, with these new rules and getting stronger and just getting just a lot more comfortable with these rule changes. So it's going to be another, you know, extremely interesting season in the Big East. So let's start with St. John's, okay? And listen, St. John's, you know, I got nothing but love for them, but man, I mean, they 29% last season as a team facing off. So you clearly have nowhere to go, hopefully, but up this year. I hope they can do a little bit better than 29% this season. You know, they did lose their freshman last season. Jonathan Duginio, you know, who started for Rutgers this past season, he transferred from St. John's. He was a freshman there and put together a nice season. And when he transferred, they didn't have much at the position. I mean, they had a couple freshmen I see here who they threw in, and you know, had some moments, but you know, they're freshmen. So you know, how can you really rely? You can't rely too much on a freshman to kind of come in and really, you know, light the world on fire. So, you know, St. John's, I remember, you know, the first game of the season, they beat Hofstra 19-18. I remember, I still have nightmares breaking down the film of that game. It took me I felt like a whole night. They beat them 19-18. I'm like, whoa, you know, maybe St. John's has got a squad this year. And then they proceeded to lose the next 11 games in a row. So, I don't know much about, you know, who they have coming back as far as the team goes for St. John's, but, you know, let's talk about their faceoff guys real quick. You know, one of their freshmen last year was Jack Omiki, he's a Farmingdale, New York guy, played in 10 games, took 178 faceoffs. He won 64 of them. He was 36% on the year. You know, I'm looking at a couple of his actual games that he played in. I mean, he did split with Georgetown 11-11 back on April 3rd, which is certainly impressive. He led the team with 34 ground balls. I mean, you know, I don't know. 34 seems a little low to me. I mean, to lead the team with 34 ground balls, that's certainly that's a whole nother problem. But you know, listen, split with Georgetown 11-11. He was only a freshman, so again, I think, you know, I would imagine he's been working hard to got a ton of experience as a freshman, which is huge. So And then, you have a couple of these other kids here, Joe Fitzpatrick, he took 33 faceoffs, 9 of 33 for 27%. You have a Texas guy here, Trevor Bastini, 7 of 29 for 24%. So, you got 3 guys coming back who have a little bit of experience. I mean, obviously, Jake Omiki here has a lot more, but we'll see how hard these guys have been working, right off the bat. They do have a freshman who I do need to mention here, Simon Orzelle from Ohio. He certainly has a very strong resume. I mean, he was a 2-time Ohio Faceoff Player of the Year, All-American in high school, 31 goals, 17 assists his senior year, I think it says, or maybe for his career. Bring some much needed, I'm sure, competition to that, to the rest of these older guys at St. John's. Certainly he knows what he's doing. I've seen him down at the Under Armour games. He's solid. What scares me a little bit is his just kind of his build. He's 5'8". It says on the roster he's 5'8", $140. So, I would imagine he's going to blow guys off the whistle, with his speed, but if he gets tied up with some guys, I'm curious to kind of see, like, if he has to play Stathakis at Denver or some of these bigger guys, how he's going to adjust to that. But we'll see. Listen, some of these smaller, scrappier guys have certainly found success in Division I. So we'll see what Orzelle can do. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets some early opportunities this year. Like I said, I mean, 29% last season for St. John's, so they gotta switch things up. They gotta get better. So, I'm looking at their out of conference schedule here before they get going, and they're playing Rutgers. So they'll play their old teammate Jonathan Duginio again. I'm sure that'll be fun. They're playing Bucknell. They're playing Hofstra, and they're playing Jacksonville. All teams with some really good faceoff guys. So certainly a good test. They're going to need it before they get into the Big East. I'm going to kind of leave it at that for St. John's. Nowhere to go but up. 0-10 in the Big East last year. So maybe they could put together a couple nice games, try to get a couple wins in the Big East this year, and try to get back to 50% at least. Facing off for the Johnnies. So St. John's, that's my first team here in the Big East breakdown. Let's talk about Villanova. Villanova coming up next. All right, so let's get into our next Big East team here. Let's talk Villanova. Villanova, very decent season last year. They were 7-5 overall. They were 6-4 in the Big East. Lost to Georgetown in the semis of the Big East tournament last year. Man, I mean, I remember watching Villanova. I was a huge Keegan Kahn fan, huge Keegan Kahn fan guy here, who transferred to Maryland this past summer, and I heard he's lighting it up down there. He may even be starting on attack this upcoming season. So Keegan Kahn was a stud. That's a big loss for them. But anyway, as far as facing off goes for Villanova, they had a sophomore who kind of took the majority of the draws last year, Justin Coppola, Garden City, New York guy. Took 248 faceoffs. He won 130 of them. He certainly had some moments. I mean, he's a tough little, dude. I mean, he's 5'5", $160, had a goal and 2 assists, put together some really nice games. But again, against the two kind of top dogs, Georgetown and Denver, he kind of, he did struggle a little bit. I mean, he was back in February 21st, he was 8 of 18 against Georgetown. And then in May 6th, he was 1 of 8. Back in April, he was 11 of 26 against Denver. And then later that month in April, he was 10 of 23 against Denver. So, against the two top dogs, he kind of struggled a little bit. He did play Mike Sisselberger during the regular season and fell victim to him, as did many other guys last season. So I think adjusting to these new rules, it was tricky for everybody. I think Coppola, having a whole off season now to really practice and get more comfortable at it, I do expect him to definitely look a lot stronger this year. And I think he will definitely put up way more of a fight against the Georgetowns and the Denvers this year. But again, he, hopefully he's, gotten a little bit stronger. I mean, that one face-off of Stathakis just kind of lifting him up to the moon and then scooping up the ball and taking it to the house and scoring. That, that was a, certainly a face-off. I saw, that was, it was nice. I mean, he's got to, hopefully, he's learned how to, adjust if he gets countered and stuff like that. So, but he's a tough kid. I mean, he is not afraid to, throw his body around. Everything I hear about him is, he's certainly a grinder and a tough dude. So, I would imagine he's going to take the bulk of the face-offs this upcoming season. They lost the senior and Dan Fisher. Dan Fisher, great career at Villanova. So he's gone. Coppola, he was over 50 against pretty much every other team, Big East team there was, except for obviously Denver and Georgetown. But other than that, he was pretty much over 50 against every other Big East team, except one game here against Providence. He was 1 under 50. But for the most part, I mean, he was impressive. So I would imagine as long as he's healthy, he's going to continue to take a lot of them. But listen, I mean, Villanova is kind of a strange team. They don't hold as many guys they don't have as many guys on the roster as a lot of these other teams. It's right now they really only technically have 2 face-off guys on the roster right now, which is a little risky. It's a long season. They're going to be playing a lot more games than they did last season. So let's talk about their other guy they have on the roster right now, Lucas Kopecky. He was a freshman last season. He's a sophomore now. Jersey guy, went to Montgomery High School. He only played in 5 games last season. Didn't take many faceoffs. But everything I hear about Kopecky, I mean, super athletic. He was an all-state football player. He led the state of New Jersey in faceoff wins. It says 2 years in a row back in high school. Owns the all-time receiving yards, receptions, all that stuff in a season for, it says here, I don't know if it's for the state or it's got to be for his high school, but I think I remember seeing him a couple times. Yeah, again, certainly looks the part, is a total athlete. Because he was so into football, I just don't think he's really trained, like some of these other guys. Some of these guys are just like out there, like they're at the drive, like just training, like working on their technique like crazy. And I still feel like Kopecky last season was still a little late to the party as far as like trying to figure out the new standing neutral grip rules. So I don't know. I think he's definitely, I mean, he has to get more opportunities this year. I mean, God forbid Coppola goes down, or if he's struggling against somebody, they got to, the Nova coaches have to, throw him in, maybe see if if he matches up better against some of these other guys. So, Kopecky, we'll see. I'm very curious to kind of see how he looks, early in this season. I hope he's been, working hard at it and can contribute for Nova this year. I do know they kind of have an almost walk-on on that team as well. This guy, he was a D3 guy, Jack Newsranger from Delaware. He's like, I don't really know what the situation is over there, but he was a 4-year starter at Newman University. It's D3, and really good athlete. I heard he practiced with the team all fall and certainly held his own. So he may or may not get, called up to the big leagues. He's getting a master's degree over there at Villanova this year. So they may or may not have a third option at Faceoff this upcoming spring season. We'll see about that. We'll certainly keep an eye on that. But in the meantime, I mean, Coppola and Kopecky, I mean, I'm looking at Villanova's schedule this year, and you can make a case, I mean, it's as far as face-offs go, I mean, face-off competition goes, it's up there. I mean, they got Penn State, Yale, Brown, Fairfield, Hofstra, Penn, Drexel, and Delaware, all before they get into the Big East kind of gauntlet here. So, man, I mean, we'll certainly get an idea of where Coppola and Kopecky are as far as facing off goes before they get into that Big East. Before they get into the Big East schedule. I mean, that's quite a few games that they've got early. So, Villanova's right down the road from me. I would love to. I'm going to try to go to maybe if Georgetown's home this year. I don't, or Denver. I'd love to, kind of go watch that live. But we'll see. We'll see what the Wildcats can do. Again, they lose Keegan Khan. They did pick up. I have to mention that they did pick up a heck of a poll in Chris Hervada from Monmouth. Chris Hervada is a local guy. He went to the Haverford School. Jake Hervada's younger brother, the face-off guy for Delaware. Chris Hervada, two-time captain at Monmouth. Covered everybody's number one attackman for like the past 3 years at Monmouth. He was a heck of a long stick midi in high school. I mean, he would just come off the wings like a madman and just, be a vacuum. So I would love to see Chris Hervada back on the wings this season for Villanova. I don't know what the state of their defense is in, but if they could get him on the wings a couple times, he could certainly contribute. I mean, he could be a big help. So I don't know, just throwing that out there. Chris Hervada, big scoop up for them. But I'll leave it at that. We'll see what Villanova can do. So there's my 2 cents on Villanova. Let's talk about Marquette. We're going to get into Marquette coming up next. All right, so let's get into our next team here. Let's talk about Marquette. Marquette, kind of middle of the pack last season. They were in there. They struggled against the Denvers and the Georgetowns, but did okay, kind of against everybody else. 38% on the season facing off. Marquette was 4-8 last season. They were 3-7 in the Big East. A couple young face-off guys on the roster last year. All of them are coming back. Let's start with Thomas Washington. Thomas Washington, he took the most face-offs out of all these guys last year from Marquette. He was a redshirt sophomore last season, so I guess he's a redshirt junior this upcoming season here. He played in all 12 games. He's a Blake School, Minnesota guy. I remember watching him last season. He's tough kid. I mean, he plays very physical. Well, all the Marquette faceoff guys seem to play very physical. He took 212 faceoffs last season. He won 85 of them. He was around 40% on the season. He had 51 ground balls, scored a goal. He's 5'7", 180. You could tell he's got some speed on him. He's certainly crazy athletic. I'm very excited to see what Washington looks like after a whole, off season. I didn't write down what his numbers were against the Denvers and the Georgetowns, but 40% on the season. I would imagine most of his, the majority of his losses did come from those two teams. But again, I think Washington's definitely going to take a step up this year. He's too athletic not to. So let's talk about another redshirt sophomore, Luke Williams. He was a redshirt last year, took 60 faceoffs, won 25 of them, only 8 ground balls. So he's around 41% on the season, played in 8 games. I'm curious to see what he'll look like. I mean, I think both these guys will definitely get some opportunities. They're playing in more games, like I've been saying. So we'll see what Williams can do. They have a regular sophomore here, Luke Rios. He's a Colorado kid. He's from Cherry Creek High School. Didn't really record any faceoffs last season, so we'll see how, we'll see if he gets some opportunities. Maybe he's been working really hard. I don't know too much about Rios, but certainly has a good resume from high school. But we'll see what he can do. We'll see if he gets in. They also have a transfer. Marquette brought in a transfer. This kid, Cole Emmanuel, who they say it has him down here as another redshirt sophomore. He played the past 2 seasons at Colorado Mesa, which is a Division II school. Transferred in from Colorado Mesa, played two seasons there. He was 4th in the Division II faceoff percentage last season. He was 71%. He was 74. He took 104 faceoffs for Colorado Mesa last year, won 74 of them, had 4 goals. He's played 2 seasons of college lacrosse already. He played last season with the new rules. I think it's kind of a big jump to go from Colorado Mesa to Marquette and playing in the Big East, but I'm sure this kid, has worked extremely hard these past 2 years to, get this opportunity. And I'm sure, you have a chip on your shoulder, when you start off as a D3 or a D2 guy, and if you get that chance to, kind of upgrade to D1, how could this kid not? I can't imagine this kid's not working like a madman right now to prove someone wrong, to prove everybody wrong. So, I have no idea what's been going on at Marquette practices these days, but I'm curious to see if Cole Emmanuel's holding his own against some of these other guys, some of these other faceoff guys on the roster right now. Listen, I mean, they're all, I think they're all going to get some opportunities. They got a pretty good schedule. They're starting the season out playing Jacksonville, a couple really good faceoff guys on that team, Utah, Michigan with Rowlett, Drexel, Air Force. They're playing Notre Dame. So some big tests before they get into the Big East. So I don't know. If I'm a betting man, I think, Thomas Washington certainly took over 200 faceoffs last year. So I would say, I would think I'll probably see him out there, in that first game, but again, who knows? I'm not out there. So, the Cole Emmanuel thing, the Colorado Mesa guy is interesting. We'll see what he can do. So that's, yeah. I mean, again, 38% on the season for Marquette. I do expect, them to be a little definitely higher. These guys are certainly tough. They're physical. I mean, they're not afraid of anybody. I put up a great post last year of, I think it was Washington or maybe Williams, just going right at TD when he first transferred over to Denver. I mean, just got right up in his face and was trying to, kind of get in his head a little bit. And I kind of, I dig that, like you gotta try to win the mental game, So Marquette is a bunch of tough dudes. So I'm looking forward to watching Marquette this year. We'll see what they can do against the Denvers and the Georgetowns. I'm sure they're fired up for it. So I'll leave it at that with Marquette. That's all I got on them right now. Stay tuned for more on Marquette, but let's move on. Let's get into our next Big East team here, and let's talk about Providence. We're going to talk Providence coming up next. All right, so welcome back. We're talking Big East teams here. Let's get into our next Big East team. Let's break down the face-off guys on Providence. Providence, 49% on the season. They're about 50% facing off. A lot of younger guys on the roster this season, not just facing off, but in general. I think, they were Providence was 4-9 last year. They were 3-7 in the Big East. Two of those wins were against St. John's. One was against Marquette. So not a great season for Providence. I kind of thought they were going to be a little bit better last year, but for whatever reason, they, it just wasn't their year. But again, a lot of, I'm looking at their roster, a lot of younger guys. I feel like they're trending upwards. They're getting, they're bringing in some pretty good recruits. They're getting better. But let's talk Faceoff guys here. They're losing a senior, RJ Romeo, Romeo, who took a ton of faceoffs for them last year. He took 290 faceoffs, and Providence as a team last year took 343. So Romeo took 290 of them. I don't know if that was the best idea. I mean, listen, he was a tough kid. He won 146 of his 290. He was about 50% on the season. Certainly showed some flashes. I mean, he had some great games. I think that last Denver game that he played in, I think he was like winning the majority of them up until like the fourth quarter, and they kind of came back, and he finished up maybe a little over 50%, but had a great career at Providence. I mean, he had a really good career. So now he's gone, and you have a sophomore faceoff guy on the roster, and then you have two freshmen. So, not a lot of experience right now for Providence facing off. Let's talk about the sophomore. Let's talk about Thomas Fegley. He took 21 faceoffs last year, won 9 of them. I mean, really, the bulk of those 21 faceoffs was against Villanova at the end of the season. I think RJ, he might have gotten hurt or something. I don't remember why he wasn't playing, but it was back in April, and he was Fegley goes in and wins 8 of 14, had 4 ground balls, put together a nice game. He stepped in kind of cold and did a nice job against Villanova. But other than that, I mean, he really didn't get as many opportunities. As the whole season. So, going into this season now, I feel like, he maybe he should have taken a little bit more, but we'll see. I know, Fegley's another guy from Pennsylvania. He's a good athlete. I mean, he was a heck of a soccer player back in his day. He's a very hard worker. I know he wants to, I know he wants to help Providence get back to, the tops of the Big East. So I think, I'm expecting a good year from Fegley. He's certainly, he's going to get a ton of experience playing some of these really good older guys. So, we'll see. Fegley, he's a sophomore, and then you have 2 freshmen who just came into Providence, and everything I hear about them is they're certainly no slouches either. So let's talk about Richie Hewson. Richie Hewson, another Pennsylvania guy, went to Kennett High School. He took over 1,000 faceoffs in high school. 59 goals, 24 assists. He certainly wasn't just a fogo. He would stay on the field and play some offense, play some defense. I mean, the kid is extremely athletic. I mean, he's got serious wheels as well. I mean, he can, return punts in high school, running back in high school. He's a tough kid. He's just extremely aggressive after the whistle. He's very, he's very, very legit on ground balls. He can, certainly escape pressure very fast. So, I think Richie, if Fegley's, struggling, or, Fegley, if Fegley's struggling a little bit, you throw Richie in, he could, kind of give you a different style. Again, I don't know what's been going on with the 3 of these guys up at practice, but I would imagine they're all going to see some opportunities. So you got Richie Hewson, another freshman. Let's talk about Quinn Mcconaughey. Quinn Mcconaughey, he's a Massachusetts guy. And again, another crazy athlete. I mean, he was, I remember hearing about him last year during football season, and I heard he was a pretty good quarterback at Thayer Academy. He was also an All-American in high school in lacrosse, 9 goals, 15 assists last year for his high school team. I meant to watch a little bit of film on him before I started recording, but I kind of just forgot. But I've talked to Nardella, because Joe Nardella works with a lot of the Massachusetts guys, and he wouldn't BS me. I mean, he told me, McConaughey is definitely legit. He's certainly, he didn't seem surprised at all. If he did not seem surprised at all if McConaughey gets a couple starts this year, gets some opportunities. We'll see. So that's, Providence is kind of relying on a pair of freshmen and a sophomore this upcoming season against, the Georgetowns, the Denvers. You got the Villanova guy. Capola's coming back, so they got their hands full. They got nothing to lose, nothing at all to lose. They're a young team, Providence, and I think whatever happens this year, you're just kind of banking. I mean, they're just going to continue to get better and better and better. So, I'm very curious about Providence this year. Very curious. They were 50% facing off last season. We'll see. I hope they can continue to be 50% or more this upcoming season, but it's going to be tough. But again, they have a great coach in Matt Francis. He runs the Faceoff unit there. The guy knows what he's talking about. So they got a couple really good polls. So we'll see. We'll see if they can make some noise this year. So we'll see. Stay tuned on the Friars. We'll see what these young guys are made of. Very early in the season. I mean, right off the bat, they're playing Bryant. They're playing Jacob Alexander at Bryant. The Bryant duo. I don't know if I think it's just Alexander's, starting right now. But then they got St. Joe's with Zach Cole. Then they go play Tommy Burke at Vermont. Then they play Brown, and I'm not, we'll see who they roll out for Brown. And then they got Brian Herbert at Hofstra, and then they got Fairfield. So they got some tests, before they get into the Big East. So we'll see what they can do. We'll see what the Friars are made of. So that's all. I'm going to stop there on Providence. Coming up here, let's talk about Denver. We're going to talk Denver coming up, so you're not going to want to miss this. All right, so welcome back. We're almost done here with our Big East breakdown. Let's talk about Denver. Denver, heck of a season last year. I mean, we all know, T.D. Erlin, he transferred in. That was like one of the huge stories in college lacrosse last year. Denver 12-5 on the season last year. They were 9-1 in the Big East Conference. They lost their only conference game in the Big East Championship to Georgetown. They lost in a crazy game, 14-13. I think it was 4. No, you know what? They lost to Lloyd. And that was the score of the. So they lost to Georgetown in the Big East tournament, but they still get into the NCAA tournament, and they ended up losing to Loyola in a crazy game, 13-14. That Loyola game was wild. Thank God I couldn't bet on that game because I would have lost a lot of money. But Denver, solid season last year. I'm sure they wish they made it a little bit deeper into that, into the NCAA tournament, but it is what it is. So they're number 12. They're teetering in that like 10, 11, 12, spot on the preseason polls. They obviously still have some really good players coming back. They obviously have a really good face-off guy coming back. So let's talk about him. T.D. Erlin, he has moved on to the pros. And they had a sophomore, Alex Stathakis, last season, who is certainly no slouch. He started out the season as the primary guy. And really, he started pretty much every game. TD kind of came in after the first couple faceoffs, after, Stathakis still took the first couple. But Alex Stathakis, I mean, he is a monster. He was, even with TD on the team, he took 301 faceoffs last year. He won 191 of them. He was 64% on the season. That 64% was eighth in he was top, eighth in the NCAA faceoff percentage. I mean, he was a lot of fun to watch last year. I'm not going to lie. I mean, he's 5'11", 225. He's just a total tank out there. He's a Culver grad, comes from a very strong high school program. Stathakis, he played in all 17 games for the Pios last season. I remember watching that first game against Duke. He was our second game of the season against Duke. He was 19 of 25 when Duke was still trying to figure out, who the face-off guy was going to be. It was kind of it wasn't just Naso facing off that day. It was kind of a little bit of everybody. But, I mean, Stathakis took care of business. He was 19 of 25. Then he goes 17 of 37 against UNC all by himself, which was, those numbers don't really do it justice. I mean, he certainly held his own. He looked great that day. I mean, he went 6 of 11 against Bailey Savio at that heartbreaker at the end of the season. So, I mean, listen, he's ready to go. I mean, he's, I'm sure he's chomping at the bit to get going this season. He was 26 of 48 total against Georgetown last year, about 53, 54%. He was really the only game he was under 50% all season was Georgetown, which was on April 17th. He that was really his only struggle. He was 4 of 12 that day. And, but other than that, I mean, he had just a very strong season for, a very strong sophomore season last year. And now, with a whole off season to keep working, keep training with these new rules, he's going to be a major problem for other teams. Major problem. Big, strong, fast. I mentioned it. I talked about it a little bit during the Villanova breakdown. He'll lift guys up to the moon, with his counters. I mean, that counter against Coppola was just legendary. So I certainly expect to see more physicality from Stathakis this season. It is a much longer season this year, so they have to be careful kind of preserving him. So, hopefully he, they have some other really good faceoff guys on this roster. So Denver needs him healthy for the Big East and NCAAs if they want to make a real push into this thing. So, they need Stathakis to really be strong this year. So keeping him healthy is at the top of hopefully Bill Tierney's list this season. So let's get into it. Let's get into some of these other guys. I mean, let's talk about Brett Booz. He's a senior. 2 years ago, I mean, he was he was the first team all Big East faceoff guy. He won Big East Freshman of the Year. He, as a freshman, and then Stathakis kind of came in. Then they had COVID year, and then Stathakis came in, and got the start over Booz, and then TD came in. So then he kind of turned. I felt terrible for Booz last year because then he kind of went from being the 2 to down to the 3, and then he really had no chance to play. But now he's back. He's back for his senior year. I do expect him to take a lot more faceoffs this year. And he only took 48 faceoffs last year. He was 22 of 48 for 11 ground balls. Compared to the year before that, like I was talking about his monster freshman season. I mean, he took 366 faceoffs his freshman year and won 217 of them. So listen, he's had some big time experience. He's played in some big games before. He's not just some untested backup. Brett Booz, if Stathakis does struggle or God forbid he goes down, they're still in some pretty good hands with Brett Booz. Again, when that monster freshman season, he was still, guys were still knee down. But I mean, the guy got to practice with TD and Stathakis. The guys got to practice with TD and Stathakis for all last year, and now he gets to practice with Stathakis during practice every day. So I can't imagine Booz hasn't adjusted, even better to these rules this upcoming season. So I expect Brett Booz to really, really help the Pios out, when they need it, if Stathakis needs a blow or something like that. So, so we got the two of those guys, and then they have a freshman. Ethan Chris. He's from Manhattan. He's a New York City guy. Went to Riverdale Country School. He was pretty, well known around the club circuit. I tried watching a little bit of highlights on him, but all I could really find was, stuff from May of 2019, when he was still on a knee. He's certainly tall, big, tall. He's 6 foot, 195, big, strong kid. He just had a ton of forward breaks, in his highlight videos, like a lot of these kids do, but, so I couldn't really get a good read on him, but there were some, in his highlights, I mean, he was taking, was staying on the field a little bit. He certainly looks like he has a pretty good stick. So, he's out in Denver right now practicing with Booz and Stathakis on a daily basis. So I can't imagine he's not getting a lot better right now. So we'll see. Do I think he's going to play a lot this upcoming season? Probably not. But you never know. It's a long year. We'll see what happens. I mean, he's certainly legit. So, let's talk about Denver's schedule. I mean, February 19th they play Duke again, which is going to be definitely must-watch TV. I cannot wait for that one. I think that's out in Duke. I don't think Duke's going out to Denver for it. I didn't write that down, but they're playing Duke. They're playing Jacksonville. Then they got UNC on March 5th. That'll be a good one. Then they play Yale, and then they play Ohio State. So they got a couple really good out-of-conference games until they get into the Big East gauntlet. But, obviously at the end of the season, I think the big one's going to be, everyone's going to want to see James Riley of Georgetown versus Stathakis kind of going head-to-head. They played 3 times last year, and they just had some wars. They've had some huge, just some awesome battles the past couple of years, when Denver plays Georgetown. So Riley versus Stathakis is going to be a lot of fun. It's interesting, I talked about it last episode. James Riley at Georgetown, he got the preseason all Big East face-off guy. And then Stathakis, he got honorable mention. No, he got preseason All-American honorable mention at the face-off position. So I don't know. Some people, a couple people may think Stathakis kind of has the edge right now over Riley. I just feel like, it's close. I mean, they're both really good face-off guys. So that's going to be. I can't wait for that one. So I don't. Denver's always in the mix, like I said, if they keep winning faceoffs, they're always going to be very dangerous. We'll see if they can get back in the NCAA tournament this year and make some go a little bit deeper, make some noise. But losing TD Erlin is huge, but listen, they're still in very good hands with Stathakis and Booz and those guys. So not much of a drop off in my opinion at all. So, I'll leave it there with the Pios. Let's wrap this thing up soon. Let's talk about Georgetown coming up next. Georgetown. All right, so moving right along here, let's talk about our next team. Real quick, though, before we get into Georgetown, I actually, still kind of have Denver on my mind a little bit. I mean, they have, those really good face-off guys that I talked about. Obviously, Stathakis is going to be a monster this year. But, also losing Danny Logan, their short stick D mid, to the PLL this past summer, who, actually did really well in the PLL this past year, if anybody watched him. He was a monster on the wings at Denver as well. I mean, he played in all 17 games last year, and he had 45 ground balls, which, for a short stick D mid, that's very impressive. I do remember him flying off the wings and getting some big ground balls, and when things got a little physical out there, for Denver. So losing Danny Logan's big, but again, Denver's still going to be a handful at the X this year. So just wanted to kind of mention that real quick, but let's move on. Let's get to Georgetown. I mean, Georgetown, another great season last year. They were 9-1 in the conference, 9-1 in the Big East. They are looking extremely strong this upcoming season. I mean, they're at number 4 right now in the preseason polls in the top 20. They got their stud goalie McElroy coming back. Then they just happened to pick up the best, defenseman in all of Division I. UNC's Will Bowen. He's getting a master's degree at Georgetown this year and using his COVID year to play for the Hoyas. So I mean, unbelievable. What a pickup for Georgetown. I mean, they're going to be must-watch TV this year, definitely. So Georgetown, they were 56% facing off last season, 13-3 overall record. They beat Denver in the Big East Championship, lost to Denver in the regular season, got to the NCAA tournament. They just absolutely mollywopped Syracuse in the first round of the NCAAs. They beat them by 10, 18-8. That was a fun game facing off because you had James Riley and Jake Fopp at Syracuse. They were both Pennsylvania guys who train a lot together. They were kind of squaring off, so that was a lot of fun to watch. But the Hoyas definitely got the better of Syracuse. They sent them home packing. And then after that win against Q's, they go into the next round against UVA, and they get crushed 14-3. And it was unfortunate. Hoyas, Georgetown's faceoff guy, James Riley, took a shot after the first face. He wins the first faceoff, runs it down to the sideline. Someone checks him, or he gets hit. Hurt. Long story short, hurts his, I think, collarbone or ribs or something, and he's pretty much out for the rest of the game. So P.D. LaSalle kind of, for Virginia, kind of ran wild on Georgetown's backups, for the rest of the game, and they lose 14-3. So unfortunate, but I'm sure Georgetown has been, they've been thinking about that game, and they're ready to, for some payback, I'm sure, this upcoming season. So let's get right into James Riley. James Riley, he was a senior. He's a senior this upcoming season. He's like I said, a Pennsylvania kid, went to Conestoga High School. Just extremely balanced, a very balanced face-off guy. I mean, if you watch any highlights of James, from last year, any of the games or anything, or even his full season highlight tape on my YouTube channel, I mean, he's got a pretty filthy rake. He can beat you with speed. He's strong on the clamp. Won't hesitate to lift you as well if you do win a clamp on him. Extremely fast reflexes, very physical as well. I mean, he's a tough kid, good football player back in his day. He scored 4 goals, 2 assists for the Hoyas last year. He was top 20 in the faceoff percentage. I have him down here. He was 17th in the faceoff percentage. He was first team All Big East last year ahead of the Denver guys. He got first team All Big East. Listen, I mean, he's been a 4-year starter there, owns a number of different faceoff records for the Hoyas. I mean, the guy's taken 832 career faceoffs at Georgetown going into this season. So a ton of experience. Let's go back to last year. I mean, he did split with Syracuse 14-14 in that game. Split with Bailey Savio 12-12 during the season. Had one, beat up on Denver one game, and then, Denver kind of got the better of him in another game. Really the only other game other than Denver and the Loyola and Syracuse. I mean, he in one game against Villanova last season, he was 1 under 50. So, I mean, he's pretty much over 50 in every game he played in last year. He's I know he's trying to, go out this season for Georgetown with a bang. I mean, I think everybody on Georgetown, they got they got some big plans this year. I mean, they want to make some serious noise, and I think they can. Talking about short stick D mids, they got this kid Jack Leary. He was a freshman last year for the Hoyas, who played at the Haverford School, which is a strong high school program around here in the Philly area. But he's a legit short stick D mid. I mean, he's extremely good on the wings, and I expect him to have another have just another big season helping out Riley on the wings there. He's very good. Um, like I said, I mean, in the Denver breakdown, I mean, him and Denver and Georgetown is going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. Yeah, I mean, I'll stop there on James. He's ready to go. Looking at their schedule, which I'll talk about soon. I mean, there's no reason why if he gets, if he goes to work on Denver and the rest of some of these out of conference guys and the rest of the Big East, obviously, I mean, he could, certainly put together an All-American season. We'll see. Let's talk about Riley's backup last year, Carson Milburn. Carson Milburn was a sophomore last year. He's a junior this year. Played in 10 games. He's from IMG Academy down in Florida. There were some times he came in against some of these Big East games and looked great. He got in against P.D. LaSalle when James went down in the NCAAs, and had some trouble. But P.D.'s he's one of the best. So now that's never a easy task. But he was took 60 faceoffs for the Hoyas last year. Milburn was 28 of 60. He was about 46% on the season. 17 ground balls. Like I said, he was 3 of 12 against UVA last year. But he's no slouch. I mean, listen, he was a member of the U19 Canadian national team, which I didn't realize. He's quick. I like it. I like I said, there were a couple games that he got in, and I was really impressed. So we'll see what he can do this year if he gets some opportunities. Then they have a sophomore, John Dixon, only recorded 6 faceoffs last year. So I don't, we'll see how we'll see how hard he's been training, if he's going to get some opportunities. A couple times this upcoming season. He's another Florida guy, but he played for Massachusetts. That's weird. Massachusetts is kind of a team up there in Massachusetts. He, I guess he must have. I don't know what's. So maybe he moved to Vero Beach, Florida after he graduated high school, because he was John Dixon. It says here he was named to the Boston All-Decade team. He was there you go. He was a 4-year starter for Noble Greenaw, school up there. So, obviously had a great career in high school up there in Boston. So we'll see what he can do. We'll see if he gets some opportunities. So they got 3 guys, and then they have a freshman who's no joke either. I mean, they have another Riley, no relation, but his name's Matt Riley. He's a freshman from Westchester, Pennsylvania. He went to school down in Delaware at Salesianum. I've known Matt for a number of years. He is extremely good. He was an All-American in high school. Played for all the undergrad All-America teams for Team Philly, and he was 79% last season in high school, had 15 goals, 11 assists. I mean, he's another guy who stayed on the field a lot and, would dodge you from attack from X and stuff like that. I mean, he's a really good athlete. I was hearing in the fall, he was actually, playing a lot of short stick D mid for Georgetown. I mean, because he's that, he's a legit lacrosse player. But he's too talented at facing off. I mean, they have to, I would imagine he's still going to, be in the mix at facing off. Everything I'm hearing is, he's shown up down there in Washington, D.C., and he's holding his own against all these guys. So, listen, Matt Riley, again, extremely hard worker, man of very few words, but man, he's legit. So, I'm curious to see if, where he is on the depth chart and if he gets some opportunities. I think I'm pretty confident he's a guy that we'll be talking about in these Big East breakdowns for years to come. But we'll see. I mean, he's, whether it's short stick D mid or facing off. I mean, the guy is, like I said, he's a good teammate. He's going to do whatever he can to help Georgetown, hopefully get to the Final Four this year. So, it's going to be it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun watching. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of fun watching the Hoyas this year. Kind of looking at their schedule. I didn't write it down, so I'm just going to kind of just look it up real quick here. They have, I mean, I know the big one for me out of conference schedule is they're playing Lehigh, and that's going to be a lot of fun because James Riley and Mike Sisselberger, they were both in the class of 2018, and they grew up kind of facing off against each other, and I know that'll be a fun one for the both of them. But I have their schedule pulled up here. I mean, they start right off the bat. They play Johns Hopkins February 13th. And then they go up to Philly. They play Penn. And then they're going out to South Bend. They're playing Notre Dame. I mean, those 3 games are no joke. Then they got the Mount St. Mary's, Princeton, Richmond, Utah, and then Lehigh. So they play Lehigh right before. So March 26th, they play Lehigh. They play Mike Sis. And then April 2nd, they've got Stathakis right off the bat. They're going out to Denver. So, I mean, Mike Sis and then Stathakis. So, a lot of meat there. A lot of, 2 big dudes, 2 big, strong guys. So, that's a good schedule. I mean, and then they got Loyola kind of in the middle of these Big East games, which I kind of like. That'll be another great test against Bailey Savio and Loyola and those, that strong face-off unit that Loyola will have this year. So, we'll see. We'll see what the Hoyas can do this year. I mean, again, they've really reloaded. They brought in some amazing players. I can't imagine we won't see Georgetown in the NCAA tournament this year, but I don't want to jinx them, so we'll see. So that, I'll stop there on Georgetown. That was, so that's going to do it for our Big East breakdown here. Man, I can't wait for the season. I saw on Twitter today that the Las Vegas guy was back. He put up all of his lines, and I also saw that Chris Jass dude. He let us know that DraftKings, you can even bet on the Bellarmine Mercer game coming up. So it's just going to be such a fun season. So if you don't follow that Las Vegas guy on Twitter, please give him a follow. I mean, he's usually pretty good with his lines too. So again, I'm getting totally off topic here, but that was my Big East breakdown. I'm definitely going to try to do another conference in the next day or two here. I might even be bringing somebody on to kind of break down a conference or two with me. So, definitely stay tuned for that. And we'll wrap this thing up. So thanks for listening to the Big East breakdown here. All right, so that's going to do it for our 6th episode now of the Faceoff Zone podcast. If you haven't already, like I said, please check out the Faceoff Zone channel on YouTube and give it a subscribe. You can see all the upcoming full game Faceoff highlights I plan on showing, as well as all the games from last season and all the pro games and individual highlights that we made last year. So definitely check it out if you're a lover of Faceoffs like I am. I mean, it's a you can't not love that channel. So definitely go give it a subscribe. Please, if you're on Instagram, please give me a follow at FO_zone. You can check out some fun breakdowns and some fun posts we do on there. And as always, I'll be hanging out all season long, talking about some of these epic face